Today we're going to have a great discussion again. We've got a returning guest to the program. This is a topic that's going to be wide ranging. It's deep in terms of its historical background because we have Professor Andrei Znamenski, who is a professor at Memphis University. He has written a book called Socialism as a Secular Creed, a Modern Global History. And it's a fascinating look at the origins of socialism as what he describes as basically an apocalyptic sect of Christianity that splits out and creates what we now consider to be a very, very powerful economic and political project in the modern world. So welcome back to the program, Professor.
Thank you, David, for having me, and I'm glad to talk to your listeners. You know, wherever they are. You know, in the United States, in Canada, I don't know. So I'm ready. I'm all open for discussion. I just came back from a conference at the Mises Institute where I delivered. It was called a memorial lecture, right. Mises Memorial Lecture, and in this lecture, I discuss the origin of socialism and where we are in terms of the socialist collective right now. So how we should proceed when we see this socialist mainstream try to impose on us their views.
Now, one of the things that you point out in your lecture and in your work is how socialism caught on in America. You said that it was part of a kind of new age trend that was taking place, right?
The problem is that the origin of socialism, as you correctly mentioned regarding my book, and that's what I'm trying to explain to people. So the origin of socialism actually should be found in apocalyptic movements, okay, in the wake of the Enlightenment, when traditional Christianity was in crisis in Europe, especially after the French Revolution, okay? So we see, especially in Northern Europe, we see a bunch of Protestant sects. They tried to preach their own vision of God. Some of these sects became completely secularized, okay? There is no room for us right now to explain all the details of this, but to make a long story short, there was a debate among Protestant sects, especially in the wake of the Reformation, about how to interpret the Bible, how should we take the word of the Bible, okay? And some sects, Protestant movements who said we need to accept the Bible instead of the Roman Pope, okay? And that was the mainstream. But some of the Protestant movements and sects, they started to argue we should go beyond the Bible. Okay, the Bible was written, recorded by some people. Maybe it's not reliable. So some people started to argue, oh, the God shouldn't be found in the Bible. Okay, the God is something that should be found in your heart. Okay, that's how we have in Germany some sects, they went beyond Bible. On the other hand, we also have some groups of Protestants who said, oh, maybe Bible is not totally reliable. Maybe we should find another spiritual anchor somewhere else, okay? And that's what opened the Pandora's box, okay? What should be our anchor? At that time, especially at the turn of the 1800s, people became obsessed with science. Science was everything. Remember, the steamboat was invented, the steam engine was invented later, electricity, people talked about magnetism. So there was such an obsession, especially among educated people, that, oh, the science can perform miracles. Let's conquer the nature. Remember Francis Bacon in early days when, before actually the scientific revolution, he said, we should conquer the nature, knowledge is power. And that's where they were driving it, okay? We have Jacobins in the French Revolution. They tried to destroy religion. They said, oh, we don't need religion. It's really bad. What we need religion of reason, religion of science. And I think I told you before that in Paris, they even destroyed the Notre Dame Cathedral. And instead of a Catholic Notre Dame Cathedral, what they did, they turned this building in the Temple of Reason. And they put the statue of a woman, supposedly she was to symbolize the goddess of reason. Okay, so this blind faith in science. So they thought that the group of enlightened masters, scientists, they could be put in charge of society, okay? And they could develop a scientific consensus. Does it sound familiar? Scientific consensus, that's what they argued. Jacobins, these stray away Protestants who stopped reading the Bible and said, oh, we should take science as our guidance in life, okay? They thought they can develop on the basis of hard science, they could develop a consensus and they could navigate society toward the bright future. In fact, Andrei Saint-Simon, one of the early socialists in France, he said that we can create this group of enlightened masters called the Council of Newton. Council of Newton. So look at this name, you know, it's a very meaningful, okay? And this Council of Newton that was to unite scientists, enlightened masters, they could show the way to the people, okay? What is important here to note, that was the origin of the present day idea, popular in our mainstream today, that a group of technocrats could be put in charge of our society. And not only they could control our society, they could show the way of the future, okay? And those people, and that's what Andrei Saint-Simon said, one of the early socialists, okay? And Robert Owen, one of the early fountainheads of socialism in England. So Andrei Saint-Simon in France, Robert Owen in England, they said, on the basis of the scientific consensus, we can tell people what to do, okay? If you disagree with us, it means you go against the science, okay? The science which we know about. Okay? It sounds familiar because we have recently, for the past 2 years, we have one person in our society who said, I am the science, you know, if you talk against me, if you're speaking against me, if you post a video against me, so you go against the science. So this person whose name you know, so he literally inherited the legacy of these folks like Robert Owen or Andrei Saint-Simon, who were the early socialists, okay? So they said the group of enlightened technocrats should navigate society toward the bright future, okay? So how? So we create these hubs, masters, who show us the way, okay? Regular people, they should listen to these masters. Why? Because they are very much uneducated. They don't have time. They work like 24/7. They do their jobs, you know. They're nice people. They're good people. But
what years are you talking about now again?
Okay, it's very important. It's 1820s, 1830s. 1820s, 1830s. Yeah, that's the early socialism. Okay.
And are you talking about the European conversation or the American conversation as well?
European conversation. Okay. But soon this conversation was moving toward the United States because some of these early socialists, they viewed the United States as a playground where they could do their experiments. For example, Robert Owen, who did this talk about science, he established in England, socialist churches. They didn't use this word. He said, oh, I hate religion. I don't like religion. But what he did, he founded several temples of reason, temples of science, okay, where they came on Sundays and instead of sermons, they talked about miracles of science, okay. They even prepared a book of Gospels, you know, Psalms. They could read Psalms about science. So they were reading there on Sundays, okay. What he also did, Robert Owen, he owned textile factories. And he said, I'm going to cut a working day in my textile factories. All right, sounds good. But at the same time, he said, all my workers, they should be controlled by foremen, what they're doing on the job place. And these four men, they would be writing in their books how much they produced, what they do. If they try to take a 5-minute break, they would be penalized. I'm also going to create a good worker in my factories. How? I'm going to police what they're doing at home. I will not allow my workers to drink. I will be making sure that parents take care of their kids well, and I'm going to tell them how they should take care of their kids, okay? I'm going at night to come to their houses and to see what they're doing, how they talk. They shouldn't curse, they shouldn't play cards. So we're going to control these people because we're going to create new human beings, okay? Soon, despite the fact that he cut the working day, people started escaping from his so-called working class settlements because people came to hate his paradise of the future. So he became bankrupt, Robert Owen. So this textile manufacturer became bankrupt. What he does, answering your question, he goes to the United States. In 1825, he comes to the United States and he goes to Congress, and people treated him as a European celebrity. He was speaking in at the House of Representatives. Okay, you know, there is a tradition, some foreign leaders coming and addressing either joint sessions of the US Congress, or at first it was done separately. These foreign dignitaries talk to the Senate or the House. So Robert Owen was given this chance to talk to the House. And what he says, he said, Americans, I came to you to announce the way of the future. So you had the Declaration of Independence, and I'm going to give you the new declaration. I'm not kidding. It's going to be the Declaration of Moral Independence, you know. So he wrote this Declaration of Moral Independence. So people read this, okay, they started checking it. So what this guy is going to do? And he said, I'm going to show you what needs to be done. He buys a piece of land in Indiana at the bank of the Wabash River. And this place became known as the New Harmony. The New Harmony, that was the name of the settlement. Before this Harmony, it was called Harmony. It had been called Harmony. It belonged to German religious sect. They also tried to preach some communism, socialism. That is why they were very closely related to this guy. See, he became friends with them. So these socialist sectarians that came from Germany,
he became friends with them in America?
They became friends with them, yeah. And he said, guys, you are doing a good thing, but I'm going to buy your stuff. You know, I went bankrupt, but I still have some money. He did save some money. He had $250,000. It was a huge amount of money at that time. $250,000 in US dollars at that time. So he uses some of this money to buy this settlement, and he renamed it into New Harmony. Okay. What he did, he didn't like that they didn't cut the top of the church, because the church that belonged to these religious sectarians, the socialist oriented, who came from Germany, they built a church with a cross on the top. So he cut the top of the church, destroyed the cross. And you can see right now, if you Google New Harmony, so you will see images, okay? New Harmony, Wabash River, if you Google it, you will see a watercolor that depicts a building, church-like building, but there is no top there. It's a weird looking building. So that's what they did. So they used this church building as a place to gather, to come together, but without these elements of Christianity, because they hated Christianity, the early socialists. Anyway, Robert Owen comes to Wabash with 900 people who supported him, Wabash River, New Harmony, and they begin to preach the new paradise. They set up schools, working together. Everything was owned together, so no private property, nothing. But soon, 6 months later, people started looking at each other and saying, my friend, I think I work more than you, but you go to storage and pick up more food. You know, how come? You contribute less, but you pick up more food. And he said, no, I'm a tall guy. I eat more. What are you talking about? Plus my hand was aching. That is why I wasn't able to go to the fields. Oh, you are cheating. You were sleeping there. So and soon the entire community was involved into mutual quarrels because people were pointing fingers at each other and saying, oh, you do less, or I do more. Why do you eat more than me? Because I work more. See, it's a typical story. People were plagued with envy. They looked at each other, what kind of clothing they picked up from the common storages. I forgot to tell you that they were supposed to work together in the fields or doing other jobs like craftsmanship. And they received clothing from common storages. People who they could come and pick up clothing from communal storages. They could come and pick up food from a communal storage, whatever they wanted. And soon they became involved in a bunch of quarrels, okay? And what happened? The community was falling down. People were quitting, leaving. So it was a total disaster. Robert Owen didn't know what to do. Before he believed, before he came to the United States, he said, if you create good environment for the people, okay, nurture, not nature, but nurture. If you give them a nice environment, nice system, so everybody will be nice, so I'm going to create this nice system. So here you go. He created this nice system, but for some reason, people didn't come out to be good, So and what he said, oh, you are so bad, you are wrong people, you are bad human material. So I'm going back to England. So literally define his own ideas, because in this debate, nature, nurture, he believed in nurturing, so you create this good environment, everything will be good. So I know how to create this good matrix. So he gave them good metrics, didn't work out. And now he's telling his friends in Britain, oh, they're bad people. I should pick up good people. And so it didn't work out. So he comes back to England, gave up on Wabash, on Indiana, New Harmony. And what happened? He put everything on the shoulders of his son. So Robert Owen Jr. And his son, instead of following his father's footsteps, what he did, he divided all the lands in private plots and sold these pieces of land in private ownership. And that's how community was able to survive. And his son actually later became involved in US politics. He became a diehard proponent of the free market. So he was elected in US Congress and was an active politician in US in 1850s. That's the irony of the situation, because his son saw vividly what was going on in front of his eyes.
How did Robert Owen, the senior, how did he get the stroke to be able to have the access to speak to the House?
What's that? I'm sorry.
What kind of power did he have behind him to allow him to speak in front of the Congress like that when he showed
curiosity?
up?
People were curious because before he came to the US,
was there any financial capitalists that were behind his idea that, to get Congress to sit down like little children and listen to someone, you're going to have some political stroke behind you when you walk into a new country.
Absolutely.
So who were the people that were like powerfully behind this man when he shows up into America?
I don't have the names, but I read newspaper stories. I need to do research to find out the names. But in New York newspapers, a couple of newspapers, I read about his visit. So the newspaper mentioned that he was sponsored by some British business people and by some American business people. And your question is very important, because I think some business people, especially some who tried to create the monopolies, they found his system interesting because I think it allowed them to control people, okay? Because they saw that it could work well. At first, David, I couldn't understand why in England. I have to briefly go back to England, to the English setting, because I read some English stories about his work back in England when he started doing everything. When he set up this new moral life in his textile factories, he was visited by some prominent British textile manufacturers who were thinking about copying his system. Okay, and I think what intrigued them, they wanted to have this monopolistic system of control. Okay, but at that time, monopolies were not yet widespread in England. So-called cartels, monopolies, they became popular by the end of the 19th century. At that time in Britain, we still have a bunch of manufacturers, okay? But some of them already were thinking about creating this, what I would say, Google type monopolies, you know, to centralize everything, because that's how some businesses later became the enemies of the free enterprise. Yeah.
So from the very early stages, though, you're saying that these socialist figures like Robert Owen were having major support from
absolutely. That's I'm glad that you asked this question, because politicians, and I forgot to tell you, some politicians who were connected to business interests, they also came to visit him from France, from Netherlands, from some semi-backward countries like Russia that was still economically underdeveloped. So people were coming to visit his moral communities in England. And when he moved to the United States with his community of people. So yes.
Was England really the bastion of spreading this socialism at this time for the whole world?
England and France.
England
was the first, France was the second, because it was Robert Owen who invented this expression socialism. In 1826, 1827, he introduced this word. He said, when he preached his religion, he talked about missionaries of science. So we need the missionaries of new science. And he called this new science socialism. See, he believed that the system he invented, that Council of Newton, it was to be like a new religion for people. And he called this religion socialism. That is why I want to tell something to your listeners. They might be intrigued, and they actually can check this fact. In 1850s, Robert Owen was asked by a big publisher in England to put together a brief essay on socialism. And this publisher wanted to publish a cyclopedia, the encyclopedia of religious denominations.
Right.
Think about it. And this encyclopedia, that's how they called it this at that time. This encyclopedia was published in 1852. And Robert Owen was asked to contribute an article, essay to this encyclopedia of religious denominations. Okay. And this essay was called Socialism. So there were entries on Mormons, on Shakers, on Methodists, on Catholics, on Jews, on Muslims, a bunch of different denominations. Among these denominations, there was a denomination named Socialism. And Robert Owen wrote an article for this encyclopedia. Right. Go ahead and check it on me. It's very interesting. It's very interesting because it tells us how people viewed socialism at that time. And that's how Robert Owen and people like him, they advertised socialism. They said it's going to be our new scientific religion, so surrogate religion. In France, his friend and his follower, who simultaneously worked on this, named Andrei Saint-Simon, he went further. He said, "Oh, you call it socialism? Yes, it's good. We can use this word, but we need to explain to people what we mean." And he said, "I suggest to name our secular religion by simply saying New Christianity." And this guy, Andrei Saint-Simon, he published a book before he died. And this book was called, it's 1820s. And this book was called The New Christianity. So that's how they viewed this Council of Newton, this enlightened masters who know the science, scientific consensus. They viewed it as a new type of Christianity. See, that secular religion.
I would too. It's a heresy of Christianity.
Heresy, you're absolutely correct. It was a heresy, a form of heresy. Out of this heresy, socialism emerged.
What
And
did,
when
go ahead.
when Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels came to the picture, the founders of so-called scientific socialism, okay, they said these guys like Robert Owen, Andrei Znamenski, they're okay guys, but they did not complete their job, okay? In order to complete the job, they shouldn't. We shouldn't talk about this, the ways of the future. We don't know what future brings to us. Okay, they opened the doors to a good thing, but they were not scientific enough. So we, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, we came to complete the job. How? They said, it's wrong to simply say that a group of enlightened masters should be in charge. You know, they didn't explain people why and how it happened. So Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels said, we are going to be scientific socialists. And later Engels wrote a small book, brochure called Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, okay, where he criticized Robert Owen, Andrei Znamenski, and where he argued that we, Marx and Engels, we became the carriers of real socialist knowledge. So they created their own new sect, which became outrageously popular. And I will explain to you why they became very popular. What they said, socialism, it's something that goes by natural laws. There are natural laws in our nature. Like in wild nature, we have a Charles Darwin theory of evolution. So species evolve in time and space, you know, and that's how in society we have a theory of evolution. Society evolves from what? From where? From primitive forms toward the progressive future, okay? And it's not us, it's not up to us to control this future. It's natural laws, okay? The laws of nature, they will bring socialism, okay? And we will need to help the forces of nature. See, they explained it like this, you know, and at the dawn of human history, there was a primitive society, tribal society, where people were equal, okay, where were equal but in poverty. And they praised this society. They say, oh, it's such a good society. It was good, great. But the problem, they were poor. There were no material wealth. And that's how, according to the laws of nature, of evolution, we have first stage naturally emergent, the stage of slavery, progressive stage, where people unfortunately were to exploit each other, okay? When this stage exhausted its progressive potential, it was replaced by a new stage, a stage of feudalism, where lords exploited peasants, the two new classes of people. And it worked for a while. We created more material wealth. But then this stage also exhausted its progressive potential. And that's how we shifted to capitalism, where we create a huge material wealth. But the new classes emerged: bourgeoisie, capitalists, and so-called proletarians, okay? And that's where religion, like apocalyptic notion of Marx and Engels stepped in. They said capitalism is going to be the last stage, okay? It was meant to be according to the laws of history, because it was meant to be for one group of people to exploit another group of people. Why? In order for the humankind to create this tremendous wealth. But according to the laws of nature, at this last stage of capitalism, capitalism creates its own grave digger. And that's how working class people who rub shoulders with each other, they work in factories. So they revolt against capitalism. And as a result of revolution, apocalyptic battle between the forces of evil, capitalism, and the forces of goodness, future forces. And after these so-called working class chosen people, they win, they make revolution. So we enter paradise called communism. So that's how they secularize this traditional Judeo-Christian view about this paradise, then the fall, oppressive stage, and New Eden. Do you see these three big stages? We suppose they lived in communist paradise, tribal society. Then there was oppressive stage when the humankind was fallen. And then we are going to enter to Eden, because working class people, these chosen people, they destroy this oppressive stage, and that's how we will phase out our fall. Okay. See, we are scientists. That's what they told people. That is why they became so popular. Okay.
Yeah, I see. And so
it's a weird concept.
I want to go back to some things. So
Sure.
just briefly, what did Robert Owen think of Karl Marx's project? Was there any interaction?
See, Robert Owen died by the time when
Okay.
Karl Marx entered
Okay.
the game. Yeah,
Okay,
but
so he was totally gone. But what did was there any interaction between Andrew Jackson and the Jacksonites, Jacksonians, excuse me, and Robert Owen was doing? I'm curious.
Jacksonites didn't like it. Okay, Jacksonites didn't like it because
That's what I'm saying. Like, so how does it work? Because I was just looking up the dates.
Yeah,
and Robert Owen comes in.
Left.
Robert Owen comes in
left.
just a few years before Andrew Jackson becomes president. So, what was that? What was that political interaction like? I mean, or did they just hands off, kind of, you can do whatever you want?
Hands off, and they laughed at this, because surrounding American farmers, because there were some other settlements around this colony, Robert Owen colony, okay, on Wabash River, and they laughed at them. They believed they were weird sectarians who came from Europe. But
so they didn't see them as subverting the American country with their projects from a foreign land, coming in and doing experimental communities.
They some of them did view them because like Mormons, see, essentially Owenites, these socialists, they viewed as Mormons at that time. Some people laughed at them, some people did try to attack them, but mostly because they didn't care about Christianity, they were not viciously attacked as Mormons, because Mormons try to kind of promote the agenda. They thought we kind of new type of Christianity. Okay, these people, Owenites, they try to stay away, which was good, because the original goal was to set up the community, to show the humankind how everything should be done. Okay. So that is why surrounding farmers in Indiana, they simply laughed at them. They didn't care about them. So as long as they didn't impose anything on them, see, that's how it was done.
So you got Thomas. It's interesting to look back historically here. Thomas Jefferson died in 1826.
Right.
That's a year after Owen shows up. So what's that interplay like? I mean, what did Owen, those types of early socialists coming over to America, what did they think of the Jefferson model of governance?
See, you should understand that at that time we have a bunch of different communities coming and setting up themselves in the United States. So they were sectarians, they were some secular communities. So that was the beauty of the United States. So many of them were able, there was so much space.
Right.
And many of them were able to find.
I'm just saying, what did the Owenites think of, like, here's this big, powerful figure, these folks, that the anti-federalists that Jefferson represents.
Okay.
I'm just saying, what did they think of that in reference to what they were doing? That was just antiquated or on the right trajectory, or what? Or was it like, did they view it the same way that Karl Marx was viewing history?
Yeah.
Like capitalism was just going to birth communism. And so did Owen in a similar way look at Jefferson and say, well, that was pretty good, but that was just going to be ready for us now to do it further? I mean, did it have that same kind of eschatological trajectory feeling in the way they looked at what the Jeffersonian model of governance was trying to do?
You answered this question. Yes, they viewed that Jefferson and they call them populists, but they use this expression. Jeffersonians, this idea, the society of free farmers, they thought it was the passing stage. We're beyond this, and we need to organize ourselves. See, that's how they viewed this. They said this free market, it was something that was in the past, okay? We should overcome it. We should, and we're going to show you the way of the future, because we are the carriers of the future.
So it was similar to what Marx was saying.
Same thing, exactly, the same thing. That's how Karl Marx viewed this utopian socialists like Robert Owen. But Robert Owen viewed Jeffersonians, Jacksonians, and these free farmers who wanted to do their free market stuff. They viewed them in the same way. But see, they what
But they
I
didn't
like
have the same. They didn't probably have the same antagonistic.
arrogance. Yeah, arrogance. So we're coming here. We're going to teach you how to live your life. Okay. They said we don't need to impose anything on you because, look, we're coming to settle the Wabash River. We create this model society, and you will come to us. Okay, and you will learn from us. And when it didn't happen, of course, everything fell apart. And Karl Marx said that was the big mistake. Here's what I'm glad that you persistently asked me this question. When Karl Marx and Engels come to the picture, they said the big mistake of Owen and Andrei Saint-Simon, they wanted to create these model communities to show people how to live their life. And he said, Marx and Engels, people are so dumb. They will not see the beauty of socialism. You should force them. And that's what Marx and Engels said. You should force them. You should create the Communist Party, this so-called socialist missionaries, who will force people into the bright future, okay? Who should be forced to live the life according to scientific consensus. So that's where they were separate, because Robert Owen was viewed by Marx and Engels not as tough enough, okay? So they said, Karl Marx and Engels, Owen said good things, but they didn't provide organization. They talked nice things about Council of Newton, but they didn't develop theory, how it should be imposed on the people. And we come to the picture, Marx and Engels, and we explain to our allies how it should be done. So Communist Party should be created, who takes power on behalf of the working class people and imposes the dictatorship of the proletariat, okay? Because people are so dumb, Karl Marx and Engels said, they shouldn't understand the beauty of the future. So we have to teach them. In order to teach them, we have to impose this power of enlightened experts, okay? And if they disagree with us, we have to shut them down, okay? Because people don't understand that we're working to bring the better forms of life. See, that is why Marx and Engels call themselves scientific socialists, okay? So they explain how it should be done. See, that's the tragedy of
so
our
why did the Bolsheviks find a fertile opportunity to go to Russia, or when we get into the beginning of the 20th century, rather than keep imposing their imposition onto the American people? You said that the early socialists in Britain and in France were using America as a test ground to try to do their experimentation for socialism. But by the time
it didn't work. It didn't work out.
But then after Marx, what's the era that so it just kept failing when they were trying it in America? It just didn't.
Yes, it kept failing. It kept failing, and I assume it wouldn't be so influential. Socialism, by the way, wouldn't be so influential if it had not been for what? For war. World War I empowered socialism, because war created an excellent opportunity for people to do what? To mobilize folks, to bring them together, okay? In Germany, government quickly started to experiment with what? With war socialism. That's how they called it in Germany, mobilizing resources to fight against England and the US. And Russia did the same thing. A lot of destruction was done. So people, as a result of the war, they stopped believing at that time in democracy, republic, elections, constitution. So the tragedy of the war was so horrible. Millions of people died, And at the same time, they saw how quickly societies were mobilized by the governments. And that's how this Marxian view of society became popular, especially in those countries where civic society were either hardly existed or was totally destroyed. And what were these countries? These countries were Germany, Russia, Austria, Hungary, Poland, Spain. Okay, in these countries, socialists, Marxian socialists, quickly came to power because the war gave them the tools of control. They could explain to people, look, we're going to take power, dictatorship of proletariat, and we are going to create these councils of Newton, councils of technocrats who would be able to control these societies. And that's what we have in Russia, where Bolsheviks, they saw the opportunity because the country
was involved. But America was involved in war.
Yes, but again, you have to understand.
And America were farmers. Russians were mostly farmers, right? So why did it stick with Russia, but it didn't stick with America as well early on? Now, of course, we're more socialistic over the years. I understand, but
David, the explanation is very easy. It's right on the surface because America didn't suffer as a result of the war. American farmers actually profited from the war, which later became one of the sources of economic crisis because when the agriculture started to expand in Europe, so American agricultural produce was not in demand.
You break the economy with a war, and then you give them a false medicine.
False hopes. But America did not suffer. America actually came out from the First World War as the most powerful nation. Okay, so America did not experience this tragedy of the war, what they had in Europe. Okay, so that is why there was no room for socialists to say, hey guys, you girls, you're hungry, let's go to barricades, let's impose this dictatorship of proletariat. Okay, but in Europe, everybody's suffering from hunger. Germans literally dying from hunger because England and France imposed the food blockade on Germany. 400,000 Germans died from hunger as a result of the food blockade. In Russia, 10 million people died. So there was a lot of room.
But then you have the Great Depression. You have the Great Depression in America. Then you have World War II.
That's when socialists.
Those tragedies start bringing socialism more and more to America.
Yeah, see, when Great Depression came to the United States, of course, on the heels of the Great Depression, who came? Socialists. The Communist Party in the United States, for the first time, increased its membership up to 100,000 people. That was the heyday of the Communist Party, American Socialist Party. So the Great Depression, that's when socialism came to the United States. There was a real threat, by the way, at that time, because there were rebellions. People were fighting with police on the streets. If you see the footage, black and white footage. That's the time, 1929, 1934. That's when socialists were very active in the United States. They were literally believing that soon the free market would be gone, okay, because capitalism didn't show that it could work. Now we are coming, dictatorship of the proletariat. We are going to bring the government of technocrats, and they would be controlling the entire economy. Of course, instead of these die-hard socialists, we have FDR coming to the picture, who fulfilled part of this program, by the way. I have to say it, I have to emphasize. When FDR came, socialist communists viewed him as a semi-friend, as a kind of friendly force. The Communist Party and Socialist Party did support FDR, but they supported him reluctantly because they believed that he didn't do enough socialism. He didn't complete the job. He controlled the economy. He imposed these codes of fair competition, tried to impose. He controlled agricultural production, controlled prices, controlled production process. But in their view, from the viewpoint of Socialist Party, Communist Party, he didn't go far enough. Okay.
And today we have.
Today again a new attempt. Yeah.
Today we have we don't have socialism, but we have a welfare state.
David, by the way, let me interrupt you. But today we see the same attempts to use war right now that is going on across the big water. Or before the war, it was Corona, and it empowers the forces on the left because
whenever there's a
they
crisis,
love crisis. They love crisis. Okay, before it was Corona hysteria. That was amplified, of course, because it could give the wind and this kind of the sails of the left. Okay, you understand? Everybody knows that Democratic Party became very much radicalized because of Corona hysteria, and when people, unfortunately for them, had to remove masks, now of course they have another thing. Okay, they have a war going on, and of course I'm not going, we don't have time to get involved into this debate about the war. But talking about our domestic policies, we see how the Biden team will be exploiting this conflict. Of course, I'm not talking about about this war per se, and I'm talking about our domestic policy. We see how it is going to be used by Democrats to amplify the power of the left. Why? Because the popularity of Biden is going down. Okay, even according to the mainstream public opinion polls, his total support is hardly reaches 40%, 40. So that is why we need some kind of external force. Okay, and many socialists, by the way, in the United States, they don't know what position they should occupy. You know, on the one hand, they do want to support these war efforts of Biden, but on the other hand, they don't know how.
If we have a dollar crisis because of the economic, because we're weaponizing our currency against.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
because we're weaponizing our currency, that's going to precipitate an opportunity for more chaos.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, I don't see some kind of, sometimes people believe that there's some kind of cabal of people up above, they create the crisis. No, that's not how it works. You know, as a historian, I want to tell you that it's like a chain of unfortunate events. You know, one thing leads to another thing and people become trapped, you know, and they have to flow with the current. And that's what we have right now. So the life is unpredictable. Unfortunately, we cannot control the life. You know, I know people want to exercise some control, you know, and that is why they believe in magic and something like in science or something. But the sad irony of history is that we cannot predict the future. But at the same time, I don't want people to view our future in a pessimistic like tones. You know, what should empower us as human individuals? I repeat, we have certain agency, you know, to define the life for ourselves and for our families, and that's where we have some control. You know, there are some exterior forces which we cannot control, but here at this place, David, Andrei, or somebody else, we can control our situation. We have choices, even though our history, external situation imposes something on us. We still have a choice. We can avoid it. We can move away. I believe that that's when individuals should make their choices. Okay, although forces or outside forces try to impose something on us, you know, the biggest mistake people can do it to flow with the crowd. That's when you see when the crowd invites you to join the big herd of bisons. You know, I'm using bisons as a metaphor. You know, don't run with the herd of bisons because there might be a beast in front. You know, always exercise skepticism, no matter what kind of enlightened masters around you on the right, on the left. You know, you have to be skeptical because as an individual, you have control over your life. You know, politicians might not have control over their life, you know, some kind of local politicians, politicians in high power. And these are the guys and girls who normally flow with the crowd. They run with this herd of bisons, but we are people on the ground. We have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well said. A neighbor's choice. That's the name of my show. So well
Excellent.
put. I want to tell people to check out your book, Socialism as a Secular Creed, A Modern Global History, where you can learn many more stories like you shared with us today. Thanks again, Professor. It's been an honor.
Thank you, David. Yeah, you can buy the Kindle edition, which is cheaper, or you can Google the title of my book and type the words PDF. My book is available for free if you want to download it. I put it on many sites, so you can download, you can click, you can type the name of the book and you can get it even for free if you don't want to read it in a Kindle. I thank you, David, for giving me a chance to share with your listeners my ideas, and I hope you might get something from this, you know, although our conversation was a bit chaotic, you know, but I hope it served well.
No, it was a good snapshot and a major part of the development of where we're at today in the modern history. So thanks again for sharing that.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon.